My name is Jennifer. I'm 31 years old. And I never thought my own parents would laugh in my face when I told them how bad things had become. I guess I should start from the beginning. For as long as I can remember, my family had a very clear dynamic. I was the reliable one, the responsible one. The one who made good grades, got a stable job, paid my bills on time, and tried to do the right thing. My younger sister Bianca was the opposite. She was reckless, careless, and impulsive. And yet, somehow, she was the one everyone adored. When Bianca skipped classes, my parents said she was creative. When she crashed her car, they said she was just learning. When she racked up credit card debt, they said she was finding her way. No matter what she did, they always found a way to excuse it. Meanwhile, if I so much as complained, I was told I was too serious, too dramatic, too sensitive. That was the role I played, the fixer. The one who held everything together while Bianca got to float through life without consequence. Even now, at 31, I felt like I was still stuck in that role. I worked as a project manager at a marketing firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me independence. I lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment that I had worked hard to afford. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. It was the one place in the world where I could finally breathe without feeling like I was being judged, compared, or dismissed. That apartment was my safe haven. After a long day at work, I loved coming home, cooking a quiet dinner, maybe watching a movie or reading a book. My routines brought me peace, and peace was something I had learned not to take for granted. But all of that was shattered one Sunday afternoon when my parents called. I still remember the tone of my mother's voice, casual, almost cheerful, when she said, "Jennifer, Bianca just needs to stay with you for a while." My stomach sank immediately. I asked what she meant, already fearing the answer. And sure enough, my father jumped in. "Just for a little while, until she gets back on her feet." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe they were serious. Bianca? Living with me? The same Bianca who had already burned bridges with every roommate she'd ever had? The same Bianca who left chaos wherever she went? I told them flat out that I wasn't comfortable with the idea. I explained that I valued my space, that I had worked hard for it, and that Bianca's lifestyle would clash with mine. But do you think they cared? Of course not. They brushed me off, the same way they always did. "She's your sister," my mother scolded, as though that alone was reason enough. "Don't be so dramatic. She just needs a fresh start," my father added. When I pressed the issue, they actually laughed. As if my concerns were some kind of joke. I could feel my throat tightening with frustration, but at that point, I knew resistance was pointless. They had already decided for me. 2 days later, Bianca showed up at my door. I'll never forget the look on her face when I opened it, not gratitude, not humility, but smugness. She sauntered in with a single suitcase, dropped it right on the couch, and looked around like she was appraising the place. "It's cute," she said in a dismissive tone, as if the years of hard work I had poured into affording that apartment were nothing. I forced a smile, trying to be polite, but inside I was seething. I told myself it was temporary, that I could endure it. That's what I kept repeating in my head, "It's just for a while." But deep down, something inside me already knew better. That first night, I laid out a few rules for her. I explained that she could use the guest room, that she needed to clean up after herself, and that she should respect my space. Bianca nodded vaguely, rolling her eyes, and said, "Sure, whatever." Her tone made it clear, she had no intention of listening. Later that evening, my parents called to check in, but of course, they didn't ask how I was doing. No, they asked how Bianca was settling in. When I told them the truth, that I felt uneasy, that I didn't think this was going to work, they chuckled again. "Jennifer, she's not a stranger. She's your sister," my father said, amused. "You worry too much, Bianca will be fine there," my mother added. That was the moment I realized they weren't just ignoring me, they were mocking me. My feelings didn't matter to them. The only thing that mattered was keeping Bianca comfortable. I hung up the phone, feeling invisible. I stood in my living room, staring at Bianca sprawled on my couch with her feet up, eating snacks she hadn't asked to open, and something inside me shifted. I could feel it, a storm was brewing. At first, it was just small things. Her belongings started creeping beyond the guest room, spreading into the living room, the bathroom, even my bedroom. I'd come home from work and find my makeup scattered across the bathroom counter, even though I hadn't used it. My favorite blanket disappeared from the couch, only to turn up in her room a week later. She left dirty dishes in the sink, crumbs on the counters, and clothes in piles across the floor. Every time I said something, she laughed it off. "Relax, Jen, it's just stuff." But it wasn't just stuff. It was my home. My sanctuary. And with every day that passed, I could feel it slipping further and further away from me. I reminded myself of my parents' words, just for a while. But the phrase started to sound hollow. How long was a while? A week? A month? Longer? Whenever I asked Bianca about her plans, she'd shrug and say, "I'll figure it out." My parents, meanwhile, avoided the subject entirely. I was alone in this, completely alone. And as I watched Bianca make herself comfortable, sprawled across the couch that night with no intention of leaving, I realized something terrifying. What started as a short stay quickly became the nightmare I never saw coming. The first day Bianca moved into my apartment, I realized she wasn't a guest, she was a takeover artist. When Bianca first walked through my door with that single suitcase, I foolishly thought maybe she didn't have much with her. I thought maybe she'd pack light, stay for a week or two, and then move on. I couldn't have been more wrong. Within hours, my neat, orderly home looked like a storm had hit it. Bianca unzipped her suitcase, and instead of carefully putting her things in the guest room, she spread them across the apartment. Clothes piled on the couch, makeup scattered on the bathroom counter, shoes kicked off in the hallway. It wasn't just clutter, it was a declaration. A statement that said, "This is my space now too." I tried to keep calm. I reminded her that the guest room was hers to use. She smirked, nodded, and said, Yeah, I'll get to it." But she never did. By the second night, the guest room was half empty while the rest of the apartment was overtaken by her belongings. My once tidy living room now looked like a thrift store exploded inside it. The food situation wasn't much better. I'd come home from work, hungry and tired, only to find that Bianca had eaten the groceries I'd just bought. She didn't ask, she didn't replace anything. She acted like everything I owned automatically belonged to her. I remember one night, I opened the fridge looking for the leftovers I'd been saving. A nice dinner I had cooked for myself, and they were gone. When I asked, she shrugged and said, "Oh, I was starving. You don't mind, do you?" I did mind. But she didn't care. The little rules I had set in place? Completely ignored. I asked her not to leave dishes in the sink. By the third day, there were stacks of dirty plates, cups, and utensils. I asked her not to use my personal bathroom products. She laughed and said, "It's just lotion, Jennifer. Don't be weird." I tried to remind her, gently at first, that this was my home, my sanctuary. She rolled her eyes and told me I was too uptight. But the worst part wasn't even Bianca, it was my parents. When I called them to tell them what was happening, they didn't sympathize. They didn't offer to talk to Bianca. Instead, they laughed again. "Oh, Jennifer, you've always been so particular," my mother said. "She's only staying a while. Stop stressing," my father added. It was like talking to a brick wall. My concerns weren't just dismissed, they were ridiculed. I hung up the phone feeling small, unheard, and deeply frustrated. Meanwhile, Bianca kept pushing. Every day she tested my boundaries more. She started inviting her friends over without asking. One evening, I came home to find two strangers lounging in my living room, eating snacks, and watching TV like they lived there. Bianca introduced them casually and then acted annoyed when I told her I wasn't comfortable with it. "Jennifer, stop being such a control freak," she snapped. The noise, the mess, the invasion of privacy, it was overwhelming. I began to feel like a stranger in my own home. At night, I'd lock my bedroom door, clutching my pillow, praying she wouldn't overstep further. That was the only space she hadn't taken over yet. but even that felt temporary. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was just waiting for the right moment to push past that boundary too. And yet, my parents still laughed when I brought it up. They praised me for being such a good sister. They told me I was doing the right thing. They acted like I was being dramatic for struggling with the situation. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them that they weren't here to see the constant disrespect, the subtle digs, the way Bianca drained every ounce and piece from my life. But instead, I swallowed my frustration, telling myself I could handle it. Deep down, though, I knew I couldn't. I could feel my sanctuary slipping through my fingers, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. And then one night, something happened that made me realize this wasn't just about Bianca being careless or messy. It was about something much darker. I woke up around 2 in the morning to noises in my kitchen. At first, I thought maybe Bianca was just grabbing a snack. But when I got up and peeked into the hallway, what I saw made my stomach twist. Because it wasn't just about food anymore, Bianca was about to cross a line I could never forgive. I woke up to strange noises, and what I found in my kitchen made my stomach turn. It was 2 in the morning when I first heard it. The faint clinking of glass, the sound of the fridge opening and closing, the muffled shuffle of footsteps across the tile floor. I rubbed my eyes, convinced I must be imagining things. But then I heard it again, the distinct pop of a wine cork. My heart dropped. I climbed out of bed quietly, trying not to make a sound as I approached the kitchen. The apartment was dark except for the glow of the fridge light spilling into the hallway. And there she was, Bianca, standing barefoot in the kitchen, my expensive bottle of wine in her hand, pouring herself a glass as though she owned the place. On the counter, I saw my leftover dinner, the one meal I had been saving for the next day, already half-eaten. She shoveled it into her mouth without so much as a second thought. "Bianca," I hissed, stepping into the doorway. She barely flinched. Instead, she looked up at me with a smirk, wine glass raised like she was toasting me. "Relax, Jen. You're way too uptight. It's just wine and pasta. You weren't going to eat it anyway." I felt heat rising in my chest. That bottle wasn't just wine, it was a gift from my boss after I finished a huge project. I had been saving it for a special occasion, and the food? That was my carefully budgeted meal. I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck, but I wasn't wealthy either. Every purchase I made mattered. "That's not yours," I snapped. "You can't just take whatever you want." Bianca rolled her eyes, setting the glass down as if I were boring her. "Oh, please, you've always been so stingy. Learn to share. That's what family does." Her words cut deeper than she realized. Because that was exactly what my parents always said, that I was too uptight, too controlling. And Bianca knew it. She was using it against me. I wanted to scream. Instead, I grabbed the bottle and yanked it from her hand, pouring the rest down the sink. Her jaw dropped. "Are you serious? You're insane," she spat. "No," I shot back, my voice trembling with rage. "I'm done letting you disrespect me in my own home." For a moment, the air between us was thick with hostility. Then, with a laugh, she pushed past me, muttering under her breath, "Drama queen." I stood there alone in the kitchen, shaking. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. Maybe she'd back off after realizing I wasn't going to tolerate it. But I was wrong. The very next morning, I noticed something strange. My favorite sweater, the one my grandmother had given me years ago, was missing from my closet. I searched everywhere, but it was gone. Later that day, when Bianca came home, she was wearing it. My sweater, as if it belonged to her. "That's mine," I said, pointing at it. She shrugged. "You never wear it. Looks better on me anyway." I could feel tears welling in my eyes, but I refused to let her see me cry. Instead, I stormed back into my room, slamming the door behind me. That wasn't the only thing. Slowly, more and more of my belongings began to vanish. A piece of jewelry I had saved up for, a bottle of perfume, even my makeup. When I confronted Bianca, she denied everything with a smug smile plastered on her face. It was psychological warfare. She wanted me to lose my grip, to feel powerless in my own home. Desperate for support, I called my parents again. I told them about the stolen wine, the food, the sweater, the missing belongings. I expected them to finally understand. But instead, they laughed. "Oh, Jennifer," my mom chuckled. "Bianca's always borrowed your things, don't be so dramatic." "She's your sister," my dad added. "This is what siblings do." I wanted to scream. It wasn't borrowing, it was stealing. But no matter how much I tried to explain, they brushed me off. To them, Bianca could do no wrong. To them, I was the uptight one who made mountains out of molehills. That night, I sat on my bed with my door locked, staring at the growing pile of evidence that my sister was dismantling my life piece by piece. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. My sanctuary had been invaded, and there was no escape. The worst part wasn't the missing things. It was the way Bianca smiled at me every time I accused her, that smug, knowing grin that said she was untouchable. That no matter what she did, she'd get away with it. And deep down, I knew she was right. Because my parents weren't going to hold her accountable, and if I tried to kick her out, they'd make me feel like the villain. I cried myself to sleep that night, my fists clenched in helpless rage. But even as the tears fell, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Bianca wasn't satisfied with simply stealing my food or my belongings. No, she wanted more. She wanted to see how far she could push me before I broke. And she was about to find a whole new way to wound me. The second betrayal was so cruel, it made me realize she wasn't just careless, she was calculated. It wasn't just her mess that filled my apartment, it was her complete lack of respect for me as a person. If Bianca's first weeks in my apartment had been frustrating, the following month was unbearable. I had thought the stolen wine, the missing sweater, and her smug smirks were bad enough, but those were nothing compared to what came next. It began with noise. Bianca had always been a social butterfly, or at least that's what my parents called it. To me, it was just another excuse for her recklessness. She thrived on chaos, on being the center of attention, on pulling people into her orbit. One Friday evening, I came home from work exhausted. All I wanted was to collapse on the couch and watch a show in peace. Instead, I opened my door to find 4 strangers sitting in my living room. Music was blaring from a speaker, empty soda cans and snack wrappers littered the coffee table, and Bianca was laughing loudly, draped across my couch like she was hosting her own party. "Jen, meet my friends!" she shouted over the music, waving lazily at the group. I stood frozen in the doorway, clutching my bag. I didn't recognize a single face. And worse, they were all acting like this was their home too, shoes off, feet up, helping themselves to the snacks from my pantry. "Bianca," I said through gritted teeth. "We talked about this. You can't just invite people over without asking me." She rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, calm down. We're just hanging out. Don't be such a control freak." Control freak. That was her favorite weapon against me. Anytime I tried to set boundaries, she painted me as uptight, boring, or obsessive. Her friends chuckled at her remark, and I felt my cheeks burning with humiliation in my own home. I wanted to kick them all out right then and there. But the truth was, I didn't know how. These weren't just Bianca's friends, they were strangers. And I was outnumbered in my own apartment. So I shut myself in my bedroom, locking the door, and sat on the edge of my bed, listening to the laughter and music, vibrating through the walls. It felt like I was trapped, suffocating, while strangers took over the only place that had ever felt safe to me. The next morning, I stepped out to find my apartment trashed. Empty bottles, crumbs on the counters, cigarette butts in the sink. My rug had a massive stain I couldn't scrub out. When I confronted Bianca, she laughed. "Relax, Jen, I'll clean it up later." Of course, she never did. That became the new routine. Bianca's get-togethers weren't occasional, they were constant. Some nights there were 2 friends, other nights there were 10. My landlord even left me a warning after a neighbor complained about the noise. When I showed Bianca the note, she shrugged. "So what? It's not like they can kick you out, you pay rent on time, they're just being nosy." She didn't care about the risk to me, to my home, to my reputation. All she cared about was keeping her chaotic lifestyle alive, even at my expense. And the disrespect didn't stop there. Bianca started using my things more openly, as if ownership no longer existed between us. My skincare products disappeared from the bathroom. My expensive hair straightener went missing, only to reappear scorched and broken. She wore my clothes without asking, sometimes returning them stretched out or stained. One Saturday, I came home to find her in my room, my private space. She was sitting at my vanity, using my makeup, wearing one of my dresses, humming to herself like she belonged there. "Get out of my room!" I snapped. She glanced at me in the mirror, unfazed. "Oh, relax, I just needed to borrow something cute for tonight." Borrow. Always borrow. She never asked, never returned things in good condition, and never acknowledged the violation of trust. But the worst violation came when I went away for a weekend to attend a work conference. I had locked my bedroom door before leaving, just to feel some peace of mind. When I returned, my stomach dropped. The lock was broken. I pushed the door open and froze. My bed was unmade, the sheets smelled of alcohol and perfume, and there was makeup smeared on my pillowcases. Someone, maybe Bianca, maybe one of her friends, had slept in my bed while I was gone. It felt like a punch to the chest. My bedroom was supposed to be the last safe place in that apartment, and now even that had been stolen from me. When I confronted her, she smirked and said, "You should be grateful I made your place fun while you were gone." Grateful, that was her word. I felt tears of rage sting my eyes. I called my parents that night, voice shaking, explaining everything: the parties, the strangers, the broken lock, the invasion of my privacy. Do you know what they did? They laughed. My mother actually chuckled and said, "Oh, Jennifer, you've always been dramatic. Bianca just needs space. Don't blow this out of proportion." My father added, "She's young. She'll settle down. Don't be so hard on her." I sat there in disbelief, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the people who were supposed to protect me tell me that I was the problem. In that moment, something inside me broke. It wasn't just Bianca invading my space, it was my parents enabling her. I realized I was completely alone in this fight. And yet, even then, I didn't know just how bad it was going to get. Because if I thought parties, disrespect, and broken locks were the worst of it, I was wrong. The real violation came when money got involved, and it nearly destroyed me. The day I checked my bank account and saw the overdraft alert, I felt physically sick. It was a Tuesday morning. I'd woken up early, determined to get to work on time, despite barely sleeping the night before, thanks to Bianca's friends keeping me up with their late-night laughter. I sat down with my coffee, opened my laptop to pay a few bills, and then froze. My bank account balance was lower than it should. May have been much lower. I clicked through the transactions, my heart racing. There were charges for Uber rides at 2 a.m, food delivery orders I hadn't made, online shopping purchases with Bianca's favorite clothing brands. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed my wallet, flipped it open, and my debit card was gone. I stormed into the living room, where Bianca was sprawled on the couch, scrolling on her phone. "Where's my card?" I demanded. She didn't even flinch. She didn't look guilty, scared, or even surprised. She just looked up at me lazily and said, "Relax, I'll pay you back." I felt my hands trembling as I clutched the back of a chair. "That's not the point, Bianca. You stole from me. This is fraud." She laughed. "Oh my God, Jennifer, you're so dramatic. It's not fraud, you're my sister. Sharing is what family does." That line again. Sharing? As if draining my bank account without permission was some act of sisterly bonding. I was furious. But more than that, I was terrified. Money wasn't just money to me, it was security. I'd worked too hard to build my independence, and in a matter of days, Bianca had put all of that at risk. I locked myself in my room and immediately called my bank. They flagged the charges and told me to file a fraud report. When they asked if I knew who had taken the card, I hesitated. Technically, I did. But the idea of putting my own sister's name down made my stomach twist. Still, I did it, because it was the truth. When I confronted Bianca again, she exploded. Her smug attitude vanished, replaced with rage. Are you serious? You actually reported me? You're unbelievable, Jennifer, she screamed. After everything I've been through, you can't even help me out for a little bit? Help her out? That's what she called it? I stood my ground. No, Bianca. Taking my card without asking isn't help. It's stealing. And I'm done covering for it to you. She stormed off to the guest room, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled off the wall. That night, my parents called, and somehow Bianca had gotten to them first. Jennifer, what is this about you reporting Bianca for fraud? My mother demanded, her tone sharp. She's your sister, my father added, and she's going through a hard time. You're really going to treat her like a criminal? My jaw dropped. Are you serious? She stole my card. She drained my account. But they wouldn't listen. Instead, they guilted me, saying I was making things harder for Bianca, that I was selfish for not helping. Selfish. That word stung more than anything. I hung up the phone and sobbed into my pillow, my chest heaving with anger and betrayal. It was clear. No matter what Bianca did, my parents would defend her. And no matter how much I suffered, they would dismiss me. The next morning, Bianca emerged from her room with zero remorse. She acted like nothing had happened. She ate breakfast at my table, humming to herself, using the groceries I had paid for. Something inside me snapped. You need to leave, I said coldly. She looked up, blinking in fake innocence. What? You heard me. You have until the end of the month. You're not staying here anymore. For the first time, Bianca's smirk faltered. She narrowed her eyes, her lips curling into a sneer. Oh, so now you're kicking me out? After everything I've put up with from you? You're pathetic, Jennifer. I didn't flinch. No. I'm done being your doormat. You've taken my food, my things, my peace, and now my money. You've crossed every line, Bianca. I want my home back. Her eyes burned into mine, and for a moment, I thought she might hit me. But instead, she pushed back from the table, muttering under her breath. You'll regret this. The words made my stomach clench. From that day forward, Bianca's behavior changed. She stopped pretending to be the fun little sister and started showing her true colors. She slammed doors, cursed under her breath, and went out of her way to make my life miserable. She was no longer just a guest overstaying her welcome, she was an enemy in my own home. And deep down, I knew she wasn't going to leave quietly. Because Bianca wasn't finished taking from me. No, she still had one last betrayal planned. One that wouldn't just attack my wallet, my home, or my sanity. It would attack my heart. And when I discovered it, even I couldn't believe how far she'd gone. I could forgive money and mess. But when Bianca went after my heart, I snapped. After the fraud incident, the atmosphere in my apartment shifted into something darker. Bianca didn't bother to hide her resentment anymore. She slammed doors, muttered insults when she walked past me, and glared every time I sat in the living room. But none of that compared to what came next. Because while I was dealing with the mess she left behind, I still had one part of my life that brought me peace, Marcus. Marcus and I had been dating for several months. He was kind, steady, and gentle. He listened when I vented about work, and even when I cautiously mentioned the nightmare with Bianca, he reassured me that it wouldn't last forever. Being with him was like catching my breath after nearly drowning. I thought Bianca would have the decency to stay out of that part of my life. But I should have known better. It started small. One evening, Marcus came over to watch a movie. I went into the kitchen to grab snacks, and when I returned, Bianca was sitting on the arm of the couch, leaning far too close to him. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm in a way that made my stomach twist. I brushed it off. Maybe I was overthinking. But the look in her eyes, that smug, challenging glint, told me it wasn't innocent. The next time Marcus came over, she did it again. And the time after that. One night, I came home from work to find Bianca and Marcus in the living room. He looked uncomfortable, sitting rigid on the couch, while she sprawled next to him, sipping a drink. "Oh hey, Jen," Bianca said casually, smirking. Marcus was just keeping me company while you were gone. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. When Marcus left that night, I pulled him aside. What was that about? I asked. He looked tired, rubbing his temples. She's a lot. Honestly, it makes me uncomfortable. I sighed with relief. At least he wasn't encouraging her. But Bianca didn't stop. If anything, she escalated. A few days later, I borrowed Marcus's phone to check something while mine was charging. There, in his inbox, were texts from Bianca. You don't really want someone boring like Jennifer, do you? Come on, Marcus. You deserve someone fun, someone who actually knows how to live. She's so uptight, don't you get tired of it? My hands shook as I scrolled. Marcus hadn't responded to most of them, but there were a few polite replies. Please stop. This isn't appropriate. I'm with Jennifer. Still, my chest burned with rage. Bianca wasn't just disrespecting me anymore, she was actively trying to destroy one of the few good things I had left. I stormed into her room that night, shoving the phone in her face. What the hell is this, Bianca? She didn't even flinch. She smiled. Oh, come on, Jen, don't be so insecure. I was just having fun. Fun? You're trying to steal my boyfriend, I screamed. Her smirk widened. If he wanted you, he wouldn't look twice at me. Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so worried. My vision blurred with tears. My fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. For a moment, I wanted to hit her. But instead, I stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I didn't tell Marcus about the confrontation. I wanted to believe we were stronger than her games. But then, only a week later, Marcus sat me down. His face was pale, his eyes heavy with guilt. Jennifer, he began, I don't think I can do this anymore. My heart dropped. What? Why? We're fine, aren't we? He sighed. I can't deal with the drama. Bianca, she keeps reaching out, and I don't want to be in the middle of this mess. I like you, but this is too much. I stared at him, speechless, my throat closing up. So you're breaking up with me, because of her? I whispered. He looked away, shame in his eyes. I'm sorry. And just like that, he was gone. I collapsed onto the couch after he left, my body shaking with sobs. Bianca walked out of her room not long after, her face lit up with cruel satisfaction. Wow, Jen. He dumped you? Shocking. Guess I was right. I lunged at her, screaming through tears. You're a monster. You ruin everything you touch. She shoved me off, laughing. Don't blame me because you can't keep a man. That was the breaking point. I wasn't just angry anymore. I wasn't just hurt. Something inside me hardened. Something I didn't even recognize in myself. For years, I had let Bianca walk all over me. I had let my parents dismiss me. I had swallowed every insult, every violation, every moment of disrespect, but not this time. Bianca had officially crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, my tears drying on my face. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg, or plead, or hope she would change. No, I was going to take control back, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of clarity. A cold, sharp focus that told me exactly what I had to do. That was the moment I stopped crying and started planning. When you're pushed past your limit, you stop being afraid and start being dangerous. After Marcus walked out of my life, I sat in silence for hours. The apartment was dark, the air heavy, and every sound echoed. I could hear Bianca laughing in her room, probably on the phone with one of her friends, probably relishing the chaos she had created. And I realized something. I wasn't crying anymore. The pain was still there, sharp and raw, but the tears had dried. What replaced them was colder, harder, stronger. For weeks, maybe even months, I had been living like a prisoner in my own home. Trapped in a cycle of disrespect, theft, humiliation, and betrayal, all at the hands of my sister. And every time I tried to speak up, my parents laughed at me. They minimized me. They sided with her. But that night, staring at the ceiling in the dark, I understood. I had a choice. I could keep letting them walk all over me, or I could finally stand up and take back what was mine. And I knew exactly which one I was going to choose. The very next day, I began my plan. Quietly, patiently, methodically. I started by documenting everything. Every stolen item. Every mess. Every financial charge. I took photos of the ruined rug, the broken lock on my bedroom door, the stains on my sheets. I screenshotted Bianca's texts to Marcus. I kept the fraud report from the bank. I even began recording conversations discreetly. On my phone, tucked away, I captured Bianca admitting to stealing my card, laughing about trashing the apartment, mocking me for being too uptight. At first, it felt sneaky, even wrong. But then I remembered how many times I had cried out for help, only to be laughed at. If no one was going to believe my words, then I would gather proof they couldn't deny. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Evidence. Each day, I added more to it, and while I gathered proof, I researched. I spent hours reading about tenant rights, squatter laws, and eviction processes. I learned what steps I could legally take to remove someone who had overstayed their welcome in my home. I read forums from people who had dealt with similar nightmares. The more I learned, the more empowered I felt. I wasn't powerless, not anymore. Meanwhile, Bianca kept spiraling. The more I pulled away, the more she tried to provoke me. She brought louder friends over, left bigger messes, and made snide comments about Marcus whenever she could. "Bet he's having fun without you," she'd say with that wicked grin. But I didn't react anymore. I stayed calm, collected. I gave her nothing because I wasn't just surviving now. I was preparing. Inside, a quiet fire burned. Every insult she threw, every boundary she crossed, every laugh my parents had dismissed me with, it all fueled me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of Bianca. I wasn't desperate for my parents' approval. I was done being the good daughter, the responsible one who carried everyone else's burdens. I was done being the victim. 2 weeks later, I decided it was time. I called my parents and invited them to dinner. I could practically hear their surprise through the phone. "Dinner? Really?" my mother asked. "That's nice of you, Jennifer," my father added, clearly pleased. They had no idea that the dinner wasn't about family bonding. It was about truth. About exposing Bianca for who she really was. About forcing them to finally see me. I spent that day preparing. I cooked a nice meal, set the table neatly, and sat my laptop nearby. My stomach twisted with nerves, but beneath it all was a steady resolve. When my parents arrived, Bianca played her role perfectly. She greeted them warmly, hugged them, and acted like she was the sweetest guest in the world. I clenched my jaw as I watched her charm them effortlessly, as if she hadn't spent the past months tearing my life apart. Dinner began with small talk. My parents asked about work, and Bianca chimed in with fake compliments about how organized I was. I nearly laughed, out loud at the hypocrisy. But then, my father turned to Bianca with a smile. "So, how are you adjusting? Things going smoothly here?" That was my cue. I set my fork down, pushed my chair back, and stood up. "Funny you should ask," I said, my voice steady. "Because she's not just staying here a while. She's taken over my life." My parents blinked, startled. Bianca rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, here we go again." I walked over to the laptop, opened the folder, and turned the screen toward them. One by one, I clicked through the evidence. Photos of the trashed apartment, bank statements showing unauthorized charges, screenshots of the texts Bianca had sent Marcus, recordings of her mocking me. With every click, I saw their smiles fade. Their laughter died in their throats. For the first time, they couldn't laugh it off. Bianca's face paled, but she quickly tried to recover, crossing her arms and snapping. "She's just paranoid. She's blowing things out of proportion." But I didn't back down. Not this time. No, I said firmly, looking straight at my parents. I've begged you to listen before, and you laughed. But you're going to listen now. The room fell silent. I laid everything out clearly, piece by piece, my voice unwavering. And for the first time in years, I saw the flicker of doubt in my parents' eyes. The crack in the illusion they had built around Bianca. For the first time, I felt powerful. And I wasn't done yet. Because when I confronted her in front of our parents, I made sure they finally listened. The night I laid the truth bare at my dining table was the night everything changed. I can still remember the way my hands trembled as I set the plates on the table. It was just dinner. But to me, it felt like preparing for battle. Every fork, every napkin, every detail was a piece of armor, a shield for the war I was about to wage in my own home. My parents arrived with smiles, carrying a dessert like we were about to have some cozy family evening. Bianca was all charm, hugging them at the door, laughing at their jokes, acting as if she hadn't been destroying my life piece by piece. The smell of the roast chicken I'd made filled the apartment. The table looked perfect, but under the surface, my chest burned with fire. Dinner started politely. My father asked about work, my mother complimented the food. Bianca played the role of sweet little sister, smiling at me occasionally with that smug look in her eyes. I wanted to rip that smile off her face, but I waited. And then, my father asked the question that made the timing perfect. So, Bianca, how are you adjusting here? Everything going smoothly? Bianca leaned back, smirking. Oh, it's been fine. Jennifer's so structured. She likes everything a certain way. But I'm making it work. Laughter rippled around the table except from me. I set my fork down slowly, pushed my chair back, and stood up. Funny you should say that, I said, my voice steady. Because she hasn't just been staying here a while, she's taken over my life. My parents blinked, startled by the edge in my tone. Bianca rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh my God, here we go again. Jennifer's little victim speech. But this time was different. I walked to the counter, grabbed my laptop, and set it in front of them. With one click, the slideshow of my evidence began. First, photos. The trashed living room after her parties. The broken lock on my bedroom door. The stains on my sheets where strangers had slept in my bed. Then, the bank statements. Transaction after transaction of unauthorized charges, with Bianca's name right there on the Uber and food delivery receipts. Next, the screenshots. Messages between Bianca and Marcus, her attempts to undermine me, to convince him I was boring, and that he deserved someone more fun. Finally, the recordings. My parents sat frozen as Bianca's own voice filled the room mocking me, bragging about using my things, laughing about taking my card. The silence was suffocating. Bianca's face drained of color, but she quickly tried to recover. She crossed her arms and said, "She's making this sound way worse than it is. She's paranoid. She's always been paranoid." But the recording spoke louder than her words. I looked directly at my parents. "I've begged you to listen to me. You laughed, but you can't laugh at this. Not anymore." My mother's lips parted, her fork clattering onto her plate. My father leaned back, his brow furrowed, for once at a loss for words. Bianca's mask cracked then. The smirk faded, replaced by pure anger. "Wow, Jennifer. You really went out of your way to paint me as the villain, huh? Recording me? Stalking my every move? You're sick." "No," I said firmly. "I'm done being your doormat. You stole from me. You destroyed my home. You ruined my relationship. And you laughed in my face while you did it. This ends tonight." For the first time in years, my parents didn't laugh. They didn't dismiss me. They just sat there, stunned, confronted with undeniable truth. Bianca slammed her hands on the table, glaring at me. "You're pathetic, Jennifer. Do you really think this changes anything? They'll always believe me over you." But I could see it, the doubt in my parents' eyes. The shift in their expressions. For once, Bianca wasn't in control. My father finally cleared his throat. "Bianca, Is this true? She scoffed, flipping her hair. So what if it is? She's my sister. She's supposed to help me. That was the crack, the line that broke the illusion. My mother shook her head slowly, her voice trembling. Bianca, that's not helping. That's using. Bianca glared at her, betrayed. Oh, so now you're taking her side? After everything I've done for you. Done for us? I cut in, my voice sharp. You've done nothing but take, and I'm done letting you take from me. The room went silent again, tension hanging like a storm cloud ready to burst. My parents stared at the table, grappling with the truth they had ignored for so long. But I wasn't finished. I looked them both in the eye and said, "She's leaving. Tonight. I don't care what excuses you make. I don't care how much you coddle her. This is my home, and I'm taking it back." Bianca's chair screeched as she shoved it back, standing with fury in her eyes. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I didn't flinch. "No, Bianca. The only thing I regret is letting it get this far." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She stormed down the hall, slamming the guest room door behind her. I stood there, my chest heaving, the silence thick as my parents stared at me with a mixture of shock, shame, and guilt. And I knew the confrontation wasn't over yet, because exposing Bianca was only step one. The real war was about to begin. Because even with all the evidence on the table, Bianca wasn't going to leave without a fight, and I wasn't finished showing just how far I was willing to go. For once, my parents had to face the truth, and it tore them apart. After Bianca stormed into the guest room, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled, the apartment fell into a suffocating silence. I could hear her muffled voice from down the hall, ranting on the phone to someone, no doubt spinning the story to make herself the victim. But for the first time, I didn't care about her version. I looked at my parents, who sat frozen at the table, dessert untouched. My mother's hands trembled in her lap. My father stared down at his plate, his brow furrowed as if the truth I had laid out in front of them was too heavy to process. "Well?" I asked, my voice shaking but firm. "Do you still think I'm being dramatic?" My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. My father exhaled slowly, like he was releasing years of denial all at once. "Jennifer," he finally said, we didn't realize it was this bad." I laughed bitterly. "Didn't realize? I've been telling you for years. You just never wanted to hear it, because it was easier to laugh at me than to admit that Bianca is the way she is." My mother's eyes glistened with tears. "She's our daughter too, Jennifer. We just wanted to believe she'd grow out of it." "Grow out of it?" I snapped. "She's 27. She's not a child anymore. She's a manipulator, a liar, and a thief, and you've let her walk all over me my entire life because it was easier than holding her accountable." The words hung in the air, raw and heavy. My parents shifted uncomfortably, guilt written all over their faces. For the first time, I saw the cracks in their blind defense of Bianca. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't brushing me off. They were seeing the truth, even if it broke them. But that didn't mean they were ready to take my side. Not completely. The guest room door slammed open, and Bianca reappeared, her phone in hand, eyes blazing. "So, this is your little plan?" she sneered. "Turn everyone against me? Congratulations, Jennifer. You finally got your pity party." "This isn't pity, Bianca," I said, standing tall. "This is accountability." She scoffed. "Accountability? You sound ridiculous. You think one stupid slideshow is going to erase the fact that you're a miserable, lonely control freak? They'll never believe you over me." I glanced at my parents. Both looked stricken, torn between the daughter they'd always protected and the daughter they had always dismissed. "Mom. Dad," I said firmly. "You've seen the proof. You've heard her voice. You can't deny it anymore. She's not staying here. She's leaving. Tonight." My mother gasped. "Jennifer, maybe we should slow down." "No," I cut in. "I've spent my whole life slowing down, keeping quiet, letting things slide. I'm not doing it anymore. Either she goes, or I do. And if I walk out of here, I'm never coming back. The room froze. My words landed like a hammer blow. Bianca smirked, trying to turn it around. Oh, please. You're bluffing. You wouldn't cut off your own family. But she was wrong. I wasn't bluffing. I meant every word. I turned to my parents, my voice low but steady. I need you to choose. Right now. Are you going to keep enabling her, or are you finally going to stand by me? The silence stretched on. My father rubbed his temples, his face pale. My mother's eyes darted between us, torn in two. Finally, my father spoke. Bianca, your sister's right. This can't go on. Bianca's mouth dropped open. What? You're actually siding with her? It's not about sides, he said, his voice weary. It's about what's right. And this, all of this, isn't right. My mother hesitated, tears spilling down her cheeks. Bianca, honey, we love you, but you've hurt your sister. And you need to take responsibility. Bianca's face twisted with fury. Oh, so now you're turning on me too? After everything? Unbelievable. She rounded on me, her eyes blazing. You think this is a win, Jennifer? You think you've beaten me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. A chill ran down my spine, but I didn't back down. Try me. Bianca stormed toward the door, grabbing her bag and shoving things into it. But I knew her too well. This wasn't her giving up. This was her retreating. Planning her next move. My parents sat in stunned silence as she slammed the door behind her, leaving the apartment vibrating with her anger. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then my father sighed heavily, his voice breaking the silence. Jennifer, we should have listened to you. We should have believed you. My mother nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. We thought we were helping. We didn't realize we were making it worse. Their apologies should have comforted me. But instead, they stung. Because they were years too late. Years of me being dismissed, minimized, laughed at. I looked at them, my jaw tight. You don't get to just say sorry and expect it to fix everything. You let this happen. You let her ruin my life under my own roof. The guilt in their eyes was heavy. But I didn't soften. Not this time. Because this wasn't over. Bianca wasn't gone. Not really. I knew her too well to believe she'd just walk away. And I had seen the look in her eyes before she left. That wasn't defeat. That was a warning. Because Bianca wasn't going to walk away without a fight, and I was ready for her. When Bianca realized she was losing control, she went on the attack. For a brief moment after that night, I thought maybe things would finally calm down. Bianca had stormed out, my parents had finally seen the truth, and I felt a rare flicker of peace in my chest. But peace and Bianca never lasted in the same sentence. 2 days later, the storm came back. It started with phone calls. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in months began calling me. Their voices sharp and judgmental. Jennifer, why are you throwing your sister out? We heard you called the bank on her. How could you do that to family? Bianca says you've been jealous of her since you were kids. My jaw clenched as I listened. She had gotten to them first. She'd twisted the story into her own little fantasy, painting me as some cold-hearted villain who had betrayed her out of spite. And worse, some of them believed her. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with rage. I couldn't believe it. Even after everything, Bianca still found a way to make me look like the bad guy. Then came the damage. I walked into the living room one evening after work and found my favorite lamp shattered on the floor. At first, I thought maybe the cat from next door had knocked it over somehow, but then I saw the front door slightly ajar. Bianca still had a copy of my spare key. My stomach dropped as I looked around the apartment. Drawers rifled through, items missing, clothes tossed around like a tornado had hit. She had broken in. When I confronted her about it the next day, she didn't even deny it. She smirked, tilting her head like a predator sizing up prey. Well, maybe if you hadn't kicked me out, I wouldn't have had to come back for my stuff, she said casually. Your stuff? I snapped. Half the things you took were mine. She shrugged, unfazed. Details. It wasn't just about belongings. She was sending me a message. I can get to you anytime I want. The real punch to the gut came a week later. I received a letter from my landlord, a formal warning about unauthorized parties and damage to property. Apparently, Bianca had hosted another get-together in my apartment while I was at work. Using the key she refused to give back. I was livid. I called her immediately. "You're going to get me evicted, Bianca. Do you even care?" Her laugh echoed through the phone. "Maybe you should learn to loosen up. Landlords love me. They'll probably let me move in once you're gone." Her words sent a chill down my spine. She wasn't just trying to ruin my peace anymore, she was trying to ruin my life. And she wasn't done. One evening, I got home to find my credit card statement waiting in the mail. My heart dropped as I skimmed through it. New charges, more shopping, more delivery orders, even a hotel booking. I called the bank, furious, but they told me these charges were pending because the thief had used my new card, the one that had just been mailed to me last week, which meant Bianca had been stealing my mail. That night, I sat on my bed, clutching the statement in my hands, my chest heaving with fury. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was war. She was trying to destroy me financially, emotionally, socially, and I wasn't going to let her. I started tightening every lock, calling the bank daily, even setting up cameras inside the apartment. But still, she found ways to get to me. A vase broken here, a drawer pulled out there. Like little calling cards to remind me she wasn't gone. My parents, meanwhile, were caught in the middle. My father had grown quieter, clearly disturbed by what he'd seen, but my mother, she wavered. She called me late one night, whispering like she was afraid of being overheard. "Jennifer, maybe if you just apologized, Bianca would calm down." I nearly dropped the phone. Apologize? For what? For defending myself? For refusing to let her destroy my life? "She's still your sister," my mother said softly, almost pleading. That was the moment I realized my parents might have seen the truth, but they weren't strong enough to face it. Not fully, which meant it was up to me. I replayed Bianca's threats in my head, her smirks, her laughter. For years, I had been the one who absorbed the blows, who swallowed my anger, who tried to keep the peace. But now, I felt something sharper building inside me. I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry. And anger, I realized, was power if I used it right. So I decided I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to strike back. The next day, I began laying the groundwork. I organized every piece of evidence into a neat folder. Photos, videos from the cameras, receipts, bank statements, landlord warnings, even text messages where she taunted me. I started talking to a lawyer, asking about restraining orders, about theft charges, about tenant rights. The lawyer's advice was clear. With the evidence I had, I could take serious legal action. And for the first time in my life, I didn't hesitate. I wasn't just going to survive Bianca. I was going to end her reign of chaos for good. But before I pulled the trigger legally, I wanted her to know that I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I wanted to see her face when she realized the little sister who used to mock me, the golden child who got away with everything, had finally lost. And when she finally crossed the line one last time, I delivered my revenge. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply refusing to be their victim anymore. By the time Bianca had broken into my apartment for the second time, stolen my mail, and spread lies about me to the rest of our family, I knew there was no going back. This wasn't just about surviving her anymore. It was about making sure she could never do this to me or anyone else again. For years, she had thrived on chaos. She took, manipulated, lied, and smiled while doing it, confident that no one would ever hold her accountable. And for years, she was right. My parents protected her, my relatives excused her, and I allowed her to walk all over me because I thought being family meant I had no choice. But I finally understood something. Family doesn't excuse abuse. And I wasn't afraid anymore. I started with the evidence I had been carefully collecting. My laptop folder was bursting with proof photos of the trashed apartment, screenshots of her messages to Marcus, bank statements showing her fraudulent charges, even the videos from the cameras I had installed. I organized everything into categories: financial fraud, property damage, harassment, and theft. Looking through it all, I realized Bianca hadn't just been a bad roommate or an inconsiderate sibling. What she had done was criminal. So I made the call. I met with my lawyer again, this time with everything laid out neatly in front of us. She listened carefully, flipping through the files, her expression growing sharper with every page. When she finally looked up, she said, "Jennifer, this is more than enough. You can file for a restraining order, press charges for theft and fraud, and hold her accountable for the damages to your apartment. She won't get away with this." For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a surge of relief. I wasn't powerless anymore, but I didn't stop there. I reached out to my landlord, explaining everything and sending him copies of the evidence. He had been frustrated with the complaints and damages already, but once he saw the proof, he was on my side completely. "Don't worry, Jennifer," he told me. "We'll make sure any damages get billed to her, not you." Knowing my home was safe from eviction was a weight off my shoulders. Next, I filed an official fraud report with my bank and the police. For weeks, I had hesitated at the thought of putting Bianca's name down on those forms. But now, my hand didn't even shake as I signed. She had chosen this path, not me. Bianca, of course, had no idea what was coming. The next time she showed up at my apartment, banging on the door and yelling insults, I didn't even flinch. I didn't open the door. I just picked up my phone and called the police. When they arrived, Bianca tried to play her usual game, crying, accusing me of being cruel, spinning her victim story. But this time, it didn't work. Because I had the proof. The officers looked through the evidence, I showed them the charges, the recordings, the photos, and then they turned to Bianca. Her face fell as the reality sank in. For once, she couldn't talk her way out of it. When the officer handed her the notice about the restraining order, she exploded. "Are you kidding me? She's my sister! You can't do this to me." But I stood there, calm and steady, watching her world crumble. "I didn't do this to you, Bianca," I said quietly. "You did this to yourself." The days that followed felt surreal. For once, the calls I got from family weren't accusations, they were questions. Confused voices asking what had really happened. Why Bianca hadn't told them about the evidence. Why she had lied. And slowly, the tide began to turn. Relatives who once accused me of being jealous now apologized. Some even admitted they had always suspected Bianca was manipulative but never wanted to get involved. My parents, though, were the hardest. My father called me first, his voice heavy. "Jennifer, I don't know what to say. You were right. All this time, you were right." My mother took longer. She cried on the phone, saying she didn't know how to reconcile the image of the daughter she loved with the person Bianca had become. I told her the truth. She's always been like this. You just never wanted to see it. Was I proud of taking legal action against my own sister? No. But I wasn't ashamed either. Because Bianca had taken everything from me, my peace, my security, even my relationship. And if I had done nothing, she would have kept going. She would have kept destroying. But now, she couldn't. The restraining order kept her from coming near me or my apartment. The fraud report forced her to pay back the money she had stolen, and the landlord billed her for the damages. For once, Bianca was the one facing consequences. And for once, I was free. The first night after it was all settled, I sat alone in my living room. The apartment was quiet again. Clean. I poured myself a glass of wine from a bottle Bianca hadn't touched and raised it to the air. Not in celebration, exactly, but in relief, in closure. I had survived her. I had beaten her. And I had finally proven to everyone, but most importantly, to myself, that I was stronger than her chaos. But even with my victory, the scars she left behind didn't fade overnight. Winning doesn't erase the pain of what you went through. It just proves you survived it. The day the court papers were signed, the restraining order approved, and Bianca officially cut out of my life, I thought I'd feel nothing but joy, freedom, triumph. And yes, there was relief, a massive weight lifted from my chest. For the first time in months, I could come home, lock my door, and know Bianca wouldn't be barging in to ruin my peace. I could buy groceries without worrying they'd vanish. I could lay my head on my pillow without smelling her perfume or hearing her laughter in the next room. But beneath that relief was something heavier, a grief I hadn't expected. Because even though I had finally won, I had lost so much along the way. Marcus was gone. I tried not to think about him, but the memories crept in late at night. The way his laugh used to fill the apartment. The way he held me when I vented about work. The way I thought, for a moment, that I had finally found someone safe. Bianca had destroyed that. She hadn't just stolen him from me, she had poisoned the relationship until he couldn't bear the drama anymore. Sometimes I wondered if he regretted leaving. Sometimes I wondered if he thought about me at all. But even if he did, it didn't matter. The damage was done. Then there was my relationship with my parents. They apologized, yes. They admitted they had been wrong. But every conversation felt heavy now, weighed down by years of dismissing me, laughing at me, siding with Bianca no matter how much it hurt me. My father tried to bridge the gap, telling me how proud he was of me for standing up for myself. My mother cried a lot, saying she didn't know how she had missed the signs, how blind she had been. I wanted to forgive them, I really did. But forgiveness didn't come easily. Every time I heard their voices, I remembered all the times they told me I was too dramatic, too controlling, too uptight. I remembered crying alone in my room as they laughed over the phone. How do you just erase that? The truth was, you don't. That's when I realized I needed help. I started seeing a therapist. At first, I felt embarrassed walking into that office, like admitting I needed someone to talk to meant I had failed. But sitting across from a stranger who didn't judge me, who listened and nodded and actually validated my feelings, it was like breathing fresh air after being trapped underwater for too long. I talked about Bianca, of course, but I also talked about my parents. About growing up in her shadow, about always being the responsible one, the fixer, the one who got overlooked while she was praised for the bare minimum. My therapist helped me understand something I had never allowed myself to believe, that none of this was my fault, that I wasn't dramatic or controlling or unlovable, that I was a woman who had been forced to carry too much for too long. That was the beginning of healing. Slowly, I started reconnecting with parts of myself I had lost. I called old friends I hadn't seen in months, maybe years, because Bianca had drained me so much I'd pulled away from everyone else. Some friendships were gone, too much time had passed, but others welcomed me back warmly, reminding me I wasn't as alone as I had felt. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned. I started painting again, something I used to love before life had gotten so chaotic. I took long walks, savoring the quiet, the simplicity of just existing without fear of someone barging in. Piece by piece, I was reclaiming myself. Still, the scars ran deep. Every time I heard a loud knock at the door, my stomach clenched, expecting Bianca's voice on the other side. Every time the phone rang from an unknown number, I braced myself for another relative parroting her lies. The rational part of me knew I was safe now. The restraining order meant she couldn't legally come near me. The fraud report meant her access to my accounts was cut off. The landlord had secured my locks and made sure no more keys were floating around. But trauma doesn't vanish overnight. Sometimes I still dreamed about her. I'd wake up in a sweat, convinced she was in the apartment again, convinced I'd walk into the kitchen and find her drinking my wine, smirking at me like she always did. It would take time. And for once, I was willing to give myself that time. My parents tried to repair the damage, slowly. My father offered to help fix the apartment, even paying for a deep cleaning service to get rid of the lingering stains Bianca had left. My mother called almost daily, sometimes just to check in, sometimes to cry about how she felt she'd failed me. I didn't push them away, but I didn't let them in completely either. Not yet. I told them plainly, trust has to be rebuilt, and that's going to take more than words. They nodded, and for once, they didn't argue. Maybe there was hope for us. Maybe not. But I wasn't rushing to decide. For once, I was putting myself first. Looking back, I realized that's what this entire ordeal had taught me. For years, I had lived for other people, for my parents' approval, for my sister's comfort, even for a boyfriend who couldn't stand by me when things got hard. But now, I lived for me. I wasn't the uptight, dramatic, boring sister Bianca had painted me as. I was resilient. I was resourceful. And I was strong enough to cut out the toxicity that had poisoned me for years. That was my real victory. Not just surviving Bianca, but finding myself again after the storm she left behind. But the final test came months later, when Bianca tried to crawl back into my life. I thought I was free from her until she knocked on my door again. It had been months since Bianca was forced out of my life. Months since the restraining order, the fraud charges, the endless phone calls from relatives defending her. And in those months, I had started to breathe again. My apartment felt like mine for the first time in forever. The air was lighter. The silence was comforting instead of suffocating. I had filled my time with therapy sessions, reconnecting with old friends, and finally rediscovering who I was without Bianca's chaos looming over me. I was beginning to heal. Which is why, when I heard the knock on my door one chilly evening, I wasn't prepared for the familiar voice that followed. "Jennifer, it's me. Please, just let me in." My entire body froze. I knew that voice, that tone. It was softer than I remembered, less sharp, almost pleading. For a split second, my heart clenched with something that felt like old habit, the instinct to open the door, to give her yet another chance. But then I remembered. The lies. The theft. The manipulation. The way she had laughed in my face as she tore my life apart. I pressed my back against the door, my fists clenched. "Bianca, you're not supposed to be here." She sighed, her voice muffled through the wood. I know I messed up, but please, I've changed. I just need a place to stay for a little while, just until I get back on my feet." How many times had I heard them before? Just for a little while. Just until I figure things out. Always temporary. But somehow it never ended. I didn't open the door. Instead, I asked, "What do you want from me, Bianca?" I need a second chance," she said, her voice breaking like she might cry. "I've been going through so much. Everyone's turned their back on me. You're all I have left." The irony almost made me laugh. After everything she'd done, she had the audacity to say I was all she had left when she was the one who had burned every bridge, including mine. I stayed silent, my heart pounding. "Please, Jen," she whispered. "I don't have anywhere else to go." For a moment, guilt crept in. She was my sister. The same little girl I had once shared toys with, walked to school with, defended from bullies. Was I really strong enough to turn her away completely? But then I remembered the broken lock on my door, the wine bottle in her hand, the text she had sent Marcus, the overdraft alert on my bank account, the laughter of my parents as they dismissed my pain. And the answer was clear. "No, Bianca," I said firmly. "You can't come back here. Not now, not ever." Her tone shifted instantly, the pleading giving way to bitterness. "Wow, so that's it? You're just going to abandon me? Your own sister?" "You abandoned me a long time ago," I shot back. "When you stole from me, when you ruined my home, when you tried to destroy my relationship, don't pretend you care now." There was a pause. Then, her voice hardened. "You think you're better than me, don't you? You think you've won." I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. "I don't think I've won anything. I just know I deserve peace. And you're not welcome in it." The silence on the other side of the door stretched on. Then came the sound of footsteps, sharp, angry, retreating down the hall. I sagged against the door, my whole body trembling. Later, my mother called. I wasn't surprised. "Jennifer, Bianca told me she came to see you," she began cautiously. "She did," I said flatly. There was a pause, then my mother's voice broke. "She says she's trying to change. She says she has nowhere else to go." I felt the anger rising again. "And you believe her?" "I want to," my mother admitted. "She's my daughter. And I'm your daughter too," I reminded her sharply. "Do you know how long I waited for you to protect me? Do you know how many times you laughed at me while she tore my life apart? I'm not doing it again, not for her, Not for you, not for anyone. The silence on the line told me everything I needed to know. My parents hadn't changed as much as I'd hoped. They still wanted me to bend, to sacrifice, to play the role of fixer, but I wasn't that woman anymore. That night, I sat on my couch in the quiet, staring at the door. For the first time, I realized what true freedom meant. It wasn't just that Bianca was gone. It was that I had finally found the strength to say no, to shut her out, to draw a boundary and refuse to let it be crossed. The little girl who had been overlooked, the young woman who had been dismissed, the sister who had been mocked, she was gone. What remained was me. Strong, steady, free, and as much as Bianca might try, she couldn't take that away from me, not anymore. And in that moment, I realized my story wasn't about Bianca at all, it was about me finally taking control. The day I stopped living for other people's approval was the day I truly became free. When Bianca walked away from my door that night, her angry footsteps echoing down the hallway, something inside me shifted permanently. For the first time in my life, I hadn't bent. I hadn't given in to guilt, manipulation, or pressure. I had said no, and I had meant it. And it was in that moment I realized this entire story, this entire nightmare had never really been about her. It had been about me. For so many years, I had lived in Bianca's shadow. She was the golden child, the one my parents adored, the one they excused no matter how destructive she was. And I was the responsible one, the fixer, the one who swallowed her pain and kept moving. I had played that role for so long I thought it was all I was capable of. But when I finally stood up, when I refused to let her take another piece of me, I discovered something I had forgotten: my strength. Healing didn't happen overnight. There were days I still woke up expecting to hear her voice in my kitchen. There were nights I dreamed she had broken in again, leaving me trembling in the dark. But each day, the fear faded a little more. Each week, the apartment felt more like home again. I repainted the walls, changed the locks, bought new sheets and furniture to replace the things she had ruined. It wasn't just about redecorating, it was about reclaiming my space, making it mine again. Every stroke of paint, every piece of furniture I carried in, felt like another step toward freedom. My relationship with my parents, well, that was more complicated. They tried, I'll give them that. My father helped me repair the damage Bianca had caused, and my mother called constantly, trying to bridge the gap. They told me over and over again that they were sorry. But trust, once broken, doesn't just snap back into place. For years, they had laughed at me, dismissed me, minimized me. And while I believed they regretted it now, I also knew part of them still longed for the illusion of who Bianca used to be. I had to accept something difficult. My parents loved me, but they weren't always capable of protecting me. They had failed me, and that failure had shaped me into who I was now. And maybe, in a way, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Because their failure had forced me to become strong. To draw boundaries, to learn that being family doesn't mean sacrificing your sanity. As for Bianca, I didn't know where she went after that night. Some relatives mentioned she was drifting between couches, still playing the victim card, still blaming me for everything. But I didn't care anymore. For the first time in my life, Bianca wasn't my problem. She wasn't my burden to carry, my mess to clean up, my chaos to contain. She was simply gone. And in her absence, I found myself. I poured my energy into rebuilding. I started painting again, filling canvases with colors that matched the freedom I felt. I went out with friends I hadn't seen in years. I even began dating again cautiously, carefully, but with a new understanding of what I deserved. And most importantly, I gave myself permission to rest. To sit on my couch at the end of the day with a glass of wine, in silence, in peace, and feel grateful. Grateful not for what Bianca had done to me, but for the fact that I had survived it. Because survival, I realized, was victory. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that boundaries are not cruelty. They are protection. They are survival. For so long I thought saying no made me selfish, that protecting my peace meant I was cold or unkind. But I understand now saying no was the most loving thing I could do. Not just for myself, but for the life I wanted to build. I wasn't the villain in this story. I wasn't the uptight, controlling sister Bianca painted me as. I was the one who finally said enough. And if anyone listening to my story has ever been in that position, dismissed, laughed at, ignored while someone else drained you dry, I want you to know this. You are not dramatic. You are not selfish. You are not too much. You are allowed to stand up. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect your peace, even if it means walking away from the people you thought would love you the most. Because love without respect isn't love at all. Looking back now, I don't see myself as the victim anymore. I see myself as the survivor. The fighter. The woman who finally broke free from years of silence and stood up for herself. And though Bianca may still be out there, spinning her stories and blaming me for her failures, she no longer has power over me. Because my story isn't hers anymore, it's mine, and it's stronger, louder, and freer than it has ever been. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up, even if the people closest to you laugh first.